just a couple of things here. Our annual meeting is in November, and if anybody feels the need to be on the board or to be associated with the organization, we'd love to have you apply. And we've got 10 people on the board, and there's officers now, but we can always use new people. I would probably find a place for you for sure. That's the annual meeting is in November. Some kind of good news. We've been talking with the Ravenholt family. Some of you know them. And anyway, they were one of our big contributors when we built this building. And we've been talking with them, and we're planning on putting an addition on the back of the building right over here, kind of behind the storeroom. And we just found out a couple of days ago for sure that we have a grant of $90,670 that'll be coming to help build this, and also they add a family history resource center here. So that's good news to me. Thanks too to John that helped me erase all my mistakes in the grant proposal and so on. Anyway, we should get the check in about 2 weeks. So anyway, that was really good news. This will give us a more efficient storage area too. We don't like to use the word storage because that doesn't have a very good connotation, I guess. It's very important, but nobody really wants to fund a storage area. So, but anyway, it's going to help us organize things in the back of the building here. Let's see here. Oh, well, I'd like to introduce Judy Rushker, who's a relatively new member of our board, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Shayla and Caleb, who will be talking today. Judy.
Hi. Last night I was thinking about bringing the different groups. Like, I've always heard about the West Denmark Danes, and you can read about that in all the Wisconsin literature, and Danes in Wisconsin, and they talk about the West Denmark, and I'm always a little jealous because they were always mentioned in books, and my Danes are from Eureka, the Jensens and Caspersons. Well, Caspersons are kind of Cushing too, but getting involved this last year, actually, the Eureka Danes are part of the group that came with West Denmark. And I've never, I took some research. And also when the Eureka Baptist Church started, they were really part of the Swedish Lutheran churches up north here. And so I thought, boy, this is really neat. We're getting back together. The ones that, we're all so united, It just was a real pleasing, content thought to be. We're back together almost like a family reunion because there's such a united feeling in the background. So I did write a few notes, if I have them, about as I was learning, and I have some copies. I didn't have, and I think I have 10 copies of some of this, so the ones that are really interested in it. This is one page of the history of the Eureka Baptist Church. And the first membership book of Eureka Baptist, and then the later one, there's 2 volumes that have copies of the original members in the Eureka Baptist Church, a lot of which started the cemetery. So I do have some copies of that if you want. And then I also learned about some of the same people. Where's Shayla? I don't want to take any of her stuff. Did you take anything out of that little bit of luck book? No. Okay. This is page 44 in the book that Ed Pedersen wrote. In the winter of 1866-67, Morten Christian Pedersen returned to Denmark, and in the following summer led several Danish families to America. They chose to settle in the area around Hutchinson, Minnesota. Among them was Jens Willing, who in a few years had moved to Eureka Township, where he and a number of other Danish Baptists established the Baptist Church in Eureka. And that you'll find his name in the establishment of that. And I did write down in here for those, I think I made about 10 copies of these, of the first members of the Eureka Baptist there. And I have found their names and other work too, but these are some copies I made.
Judy, we have our own copy machine now. The library taught to announce that just hand me the thing, so I'll make as many as
If they want, how about we see, why don't I pass them around and you take what you want, and then if we need more. Then also, I think I made, this is kind of the second in a series of 3 meetings that we're having to find out about the Danish ancestors around here. And first of all, when I got interested, I made a large map that's back there and tried to find the Danes right here by Lux or in West Denmark and find where they came from in Denmark to see if they were all from about the same. I just tried to find if they all came from the same places, and it was very interesting to find out how they wrote back to get their friends to come. If I can remember the dates, I better not tell you a date. That I don't even know where I have it here, but the one man, I can't remember. It's in the Danish book, a little bit of luck. He came here and realized that this land right in here was similar to Denmark and had not been purchased yet. So he went back to St. Croix Falls and spent the winter there, all winter writing letters and telling them that I've got good land. Send me the money because it's going to go fast. And he settled dozens and dozens of people over here. And that was right before Baker and Cushing bought the land around here. So it was really lucky they got it that year, or it would have been higher. So this is in Denmark. We studied the West Denmark and the Bone Lake area. So now we're switching to Eureka, and then hopefully Jennifer Mischler will be ready in the spring. She's studying the Danes, most of who came as a group walking from Madison over to Cushing. One child died on their way. But she's studying those families. So we're starting here and kind of branch out. And our next meeting is kind of tentative, but I think it's going to be October 29th. And for those who are interested in really looking up your ancestors, it will be Kathy Pedersen-Wilson, who's going to be using all of the parish records that are online. I learned how to do this spring, and it was so exciting, so I told my genealogy group I want a class on this. And as soon as I said that, here Kathy came in, and she's been doing it for years. So I said, Kathy, will you do this? I could have learned more about it. Anyway, she's been doing this for years, so she will help you. What you need is the name of the parish you came from in Denmark, because that's essential before you start, because there's just too many names to find it otherwise. And if you do not know what parish they came from, your ancestors came from, you go to the church that they first came to, and they should have records of what parish they came from over in Denmark. And then Kathy can help you find where in Denmark and all of the records from over there. So that's how you do it. And she's coming, I think October 29th. So I know I have quite a few of these, but why don't we pass them all around and then take what you want, otherwise they'll get rusted. Yeah. Well, there's quite a few different sheets, I don't know. Also, a couple more things. I'm going to also pass a notebook around, and if you would put your name, you better become a member, but put your name and telephone number and the name of the ancestor that came from Denmark, and then we can work on this too. So let's have, sorry, we were talking about names. You gotta go. And then, one thing I learned in the Baptist,
What is the sign up sheet for?
Disdain, sorry.
Are you Dane? No. I got a friend.
Last spring when Marge was speaking, we,
Are you a Dane? Okay,
last spring when Marge was speaking, the item that brought the most interest
You wanted one.
was the happy days and the sad days. And I even had a minister call me the next week, because somebody had asked him about it, and he wanted to know about it. It was a local Lutheran minister here, and wanted to know more about it. Well, in preparing for this tonight, I found that in Eureka Baptist Church, there were regular Christians and there were perfect Christians. So that's in the Eureka Baptist Church booklet on the first page back there. We didn't get those copies either. So that's what's going. And now we'll introduce Shayla and Caleb. I've gotten to know Shayla for a few years, and I'm so glad I go to her Facebook every night to see how her kids are doing. And I'm surprised she has makeup on tonight, I thought.
Yeah.
I have one other thing. I brought Shayla a few things. She had wonderful, lovely children. And I met her preparing for a midsummer that we held down at Lamar. And anyway,
It's a Swedish
celebration. Well, it's Danish.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
But this is her oldest, Josie.
And that's her dad.
Yeah, and
Maple.
he got her, put the main telephone together. And Juliet.
Juliet, yeah. She was dancing.
So this is just little gifts for you for speaking tonight. And then I'll mention something else because I really want people to enter this in the Polk County Fair. It's just fun and it helps other people learn what genealogy is about. And you can enter your genealogy book or your pedigree chart or your family group sheet. And there aren't many entering it yet. So it's really easy to get a ribbon. And especially if you're the one that ends up choosing the judge. And others did try first. Anyway, Dorothy Adams and I won ribbons this year. But we'd like some competition for next year. And if you have questions about what pedigree charts, we have a lot around in here. And so, enter something in the fair. It's a lot cheaper than going. Okay, Shayla.
I was asked to come and talk about the New Home Cemetery. My name is Shayla Johnson, and I grew up about a mile from the cemetery. In fact, my sisters used to mow the grass at the cemetery for their school clothes in the fall. So, I was a little nervous being here, but I see I have Betty and Steve also from the cemetery, and I have two aunts here that I just saw, so they can help me out if I get stuck. I'll give, what I'm about to read is the beginning notes of the original, from the first meetings of the people that decided to put the cemetery together, and these were originally in Danish, so we had to have them translated. The New Home Cemetery. In 1877, Eurekans, Christian Nelson, whose descendants are these ladies right here, which is pretty exciting, who I found out I'm related to. You never know who you're related to. Received his homestead patent, and on December 8th, he called the first meeting to organize a cemetery on a section of his property. In attendance were Jacob Olson, Christian Nelson, Morton Nelson, Hans Nelson, J.C. Nelson, John Nelson, Paul Rasmussen, Nels Jensen, J.P. Gallo, J.C. Hansen, John Goodmanson, J.J. Goodmanson, and A. Bjornsted, most of whom were Danish Baptists. It was determined that the association be known by the corporate name of New Home Cemetery Association. Originally, they divided up the land into 40 lots with roughly 12 plots in the more western lots and 8 or 4 plots in the eastern lots. The cemetery was expanded to the west and east sides during the 1920s, all the lots having been purchased by that time. Additional sections were purchased in the 70s and 90s from James Gray. In some respects, the early burial was like that of a private cemetery, with family members taking care of the burial in the family lot. Unfortunately, this means that there are a number of unmarked graves at new home, as family members sometimes could not afford a headstone immediately. It wasn't until the 1920s that burial permits were required. After that, the sexton records gave the location of each grave. So if there is no headstone, the location of a particular grave prior to 1925 is anyone's guess. Now, fortunately, I didn't have to do all this research. I have some relatives, Marilyn and Andrea, who took up great interest. They live out on the West Coast and put hundreds and hundreds of hours into our family genealogy. Ladies are shaking their heads, and I'm sure they came to visit you. They were at Steve Jensen's a lot. He's the president of our cemetery, and spent many hours at my parents' house, and eventually put 2 big books together of the whole Anderson genealogy. That would be it. Am I related to you too?
Evidently.
You're in the book. I'm related to you. Yes, so that wonderful book, and all sorts of information is in there. My cousin Amber had been out east and was telling me about this cemetery that she had visited that had this big book, and you were able to look in the book and match it to a headstone and tell the story of that person. And she said, I think that would be really fun to do at our cemetery. And so we found out when the next cemetery meeting was, and these 2 young girls walked in, and everybody kind of looked like, do you know why you're here? And so they went through all the business, and we're just so anxious. We couldn't wait to tell them our big plans. And they pretty much said, yeah, go for it, you know. And so we had to get bids to build this informational, we called it a kiosk. We came up with a fancy word for it. And took quite a while, because my brother donated the time, but he got busy, and then winter comes, and you can't do anything then. But my goal was to have it up by this Memorial Day, and we did get it up. And we have this history that I read, we had made into a banner that's inside the kiosk, and there's 2 more pieces coming. We're waiting for those to finish at the printers, and it's really interesting because there's actually pictures also, and those are people that are actually buried at the cemetery. And then also we started collecting the stories of people that are buried in the cemetery. So I have a book back there, and every person who's buried in the cemetery is allowed 2 pieces of paper and their story, and you can put whatever you'd like on there. Pictures, stories, newspaper clippings, whatever you'd like to tell about your ancestor that's buried there. So that's an ongoing project, and every once in a while I'll get one in the mail, and I'm more than excited to read it. We have an excellent memorial service every Memorial Day, and with a pretty good turnout of about 50 people, I'd say, and getting more and more every year. We've been very lucky with nice weather. This year, just barely getting it in before the rain. And with the kiosk, we have a water tank. There's no source of water up there, so we have a water tank to go in, but again, it's on the to-do list. We all know how that works. Does anybody have any questions about the kiosk at the cemetery? Or does any of my cemetery friends have something to add? Yeah.
Can you tell me where the new home cemetery is?
Yes. If you go out of Milltown, you take a right on County Road G. And how far would you drive, Steve? 6.
You go to 200.
200? Okay, about what, 8 miles?
No, not even.
Not even 5?
Because it's 5 from my house to Milltown, so.
Oh, okay, so 4?
Yeah.
2 country music songs. But the road splits, and if you go to the left, the cemetery is right on the left. It's a really cute country cemetery surrounded by a cow field with Charolais cattle in it, and it's really cute with the white cows. So, It's kind of on a hill. So, yeah.
Is it right on?
Nope, it's right off of G, 200th Street. G keeps going this way around a really curvy hill, and then 200 goes this way.
By that big tower that.
Unity
Yep.
Tower, or what is it called?
Oh, yeah, that big blinking thing?
Yeah, and-
Yeah.
Not too far.
Right
from
past
the road.
that is the road that splits off. Yeah, so just go towards the tower and then to the left. And then the cemetery's on the left. Yeah.
Cemetery's on the right when you're coming from the east.
Yeah, you're coming from 87, it's down the right, you know.
How many burials are there in the cemetery, and how many families do you think there are?
Steve?
We have 40 lots, and most all of those were originally purchased by families, and 15 lots per grave, or per lot, 15 graves per lot, and all 40 families have members on them at this time. There are some who have returned them and have been resold. All I can say is that the book that Marilyn and Andrea gave me is rather thick.
Yes, they put a lot of work in, that's priceless.
And
They
in the-
went
and
through
actually in the back,
documented everything.
It corresponds to, you take a name and it corresponds to the lot, so that you can kind of check who, and as she said, it's surprising, when they first came to me, they asked for strictly the Nelson and Anderson. They called me a year later and said, we need to come back. We're missing some. Well, gee, the Nelson Jensen had a link,
Yeah.
and Jens Jensen had a link. That our family had a link that they needed, and so by the time they got all of it done, again, all of them were connected.
And some of the stories that I've been reading of the people that are buried there, in fact, tonight, I was just talking to someone, that, I was going through the cemetery, and there was this big, this stone, and it said hatch on it. Well, most of the hatches are from Cushing, so I asked Betty, what's the story with this stone? And she goes, well, that was a baby. Yeah, there's lots of people buried there. So, yeah, it's a very interesting cemetery. So, yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Are we gonna see a picture of your kiosk?
You know, a little bit of miscommunication. My nephew's gonna come up here now and show us his PowerPoint presentation he gave his, Boy Scout troop on the cemetery, and I thought he had a picture of it, but he doesn't. So, I apologize.
Okay, we can find one. Judy sent some pictures from the cemetery to my email, and so after we get through the presentation.
Yeah, and trying to keep costs down. It's the same color as my brother's newly remodeled house. Tan siding and the green shingles, you know. He's like, hey, I have this leftover, and I'm like, leftover paint, leftover shingles, it all still came out looking nice. So I'm like, we'll take it. So, yeah, it was great. So, Caleb, you're up. This is Caleb Gerhardt, my nephew.
Hello, I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint that I made for our merit badge of Boy Scouts. So, yeah, it's about my family that's buried in the New Home Cemetery.
Do you want to stay up there and talk, and I can just push the button?
Oh, yeah.
Do that. Okay, the New Home Cemetery. History, I want to be talking about the history, the cultures and ethnic groups, best features, popular places where people gather, and challenges it faces.
There's another speaker over there, though.
If you just wave or something, if you want me to move it.
to learn about the New Home Cemetery. The cemetery has been here for over 200 years and is a big part of history in my community. You can get the sheet after this. Jorgen Christian Nelson, the founder of the New Home Cemetery.
Now, who's related to that?
That's her grandfather.
My family tree at the New Home Cemetery, first generation, is me. July 21st, 1999. In Mexico. No.
That Victor's in Mexico.
And then the second generation is my mom, Shauna Gerhardt. Her birthday is May 31st, 1968. And then the third generation is my grandpa, David Anderson. His birthday is January 19th, 1945. And then the fourth generation is my great-grandpa, Arvin Anderson. His birthday is 1924 through 2007. And fifth generation is my great-great-grandpa, Andrew Anderson, 1899 and 1974, born 100 years before me. The sixth generation is my great-great-great-grandpa, and it's Gregor Anderson, 1869 through 1936. He is the gentleman on the far left. Seventh generation, my great-great-great-great-grandpa, Anders Nielsen, 1826 through 1888. Anders Nielsen's house in Tremhusbilen, Denmark. Anders died in a horse and wagon accident. The horses spooked and the wagon overturned and he was suffocated. He was buried in Denmark. Anders was the first family member to become Baptist. And Sarah Gregerson, 1843 through 1909. Sarah stayed on the Denmark farm in Denmark after Andrew's death, but migrated in 1907 with daughter Elsie, and settled in Eureka. She has an unmarked grave somewhere in this part of the cemetery. The eighth generation, my great-great-great-great-grandma, Elsa Marie Anderson, 1799 or 1802 through 1879, married to Niels Anderson. He was married in Denmark, migrated in 1871 with their son, Jorgen Nielsen, to Eureka. Her stone is one of the oldest in the New Home Cemetery. Cultures and ethnic groups.
I turned it down a little, so pull it a little closer.
Okay. Danish, Swedish, Norwegian, and English. Best features is peaceful, quiet country setting, financially stable, well-documented records. Popular places where people gather. It's a kiosk is currently being built at the New Home Cemetery, which is built now. The kiosk gives visitors information about the history of the cemetery and the people who are buried there. The Milltown Legion is represented every year at the Memorial Day service. People gather at the individual grave sites for burials, birthdays, and anniversaries. Challenges that the New Home Cemetery faces: maintaining family plots, keeping gravestones from sinking into the ground, and cleaning them so they are readable. Cemetery rules: no fires shall be allowed in the cemetery except under the supervision of the sexton. Enclosures of any description are considered unsightly and unnecessary and are therefore prohibited. No trees or shrubs shall be planted, removed, cut down, or destroyed within the borders of any lot or lot without the consent or direction of the trustees. If any shrub or tree situated in any lot shall become determinable to any adjacent lot or avenue, unsightly or inconvenient, it shall be the duty of the said trustees, and they shall have the right to remove such trees and shrubs. No iron or wire work or seats will be allowed upon lots. Your ancestors is the poem. If you could see your ancestors all standing in a row, would you be proud of them, or don't you really know? Strange discoveries have often made in climbing the family tree. Sometimes one is found in line who shocks the progress. If you could see your ancestors all standing in a row, perhaps there might be one or two that you wouldn't care to know. Now turn the question right around and take another view. When you shall meet your ancestors, will you be proud of them? It's an unknown author. Thank you. Thanks to my aunt Shayla for helping me complete this project.
An interesting fact about our family is that our ancestors actually came from Denmark because of religion. They were Baptist and not the traditional Lutheran. Because our family actually owned the farm in Denmark, which a lot of people were didn't make as much money. They didn't have any land or anything, so then they immigrated. But our family actually left because of religion, and then started the Eureka Church. Or I don't know who actually started, but they were members. So yeah. So.
If you want to know a little more about the history of the Eureka Baptist Church, the Baptists up in Trade Lake, there's a book that Carolyn Ledeen translated that's written by the history of the Baptist Church in North America, but it's pretty much Wisconsin. It's by Louis Alquist, and Carolyn Ledeen recently has a version of it out translated from the Swedish. It was written in 1924 by one of the early settlers in Trade Lake, and the Swedes up there realized there were Baptists down in different areas, and so they had some mission church efforts to try to provide Baptist services for those, and so they actually sent down some ministers and folks to kind of help them organize. Another book is Rasmus Jensen, is it, Judy, that you...
It's laying down there.
Okay.
Lawrence Rasmus?
Lawrence,
It's been a few years since I did it.
We had made up a bunch of copies, but I don't see it right now, but he had written up a little history of the Eureka Baptist area also, and he talked about the first church they had and the first places that they met, and I think they used a schoolhouse. And anyway, it's been interesting. They had some conflicts with the local Lutherans who didn't think that Scandinavians should be Baptists even in America, because this area around here had a lot of Lutherans from all Norwegian, Swedish, and Danes, but there also were Baptists from each of the Norwegian, Swedish, and Dane area, and these were all spoke their own language. There were also churches in the communities too, like in Eureka, the Methodist Church, and in Wolf Creek and in Cushing and in Trade Lake, that were the English-speaking churches in the area. So that was sort of a separate cultural group too. But anyway, there's several different references to that.
This is a copy of that book. I was given this book, by Opal Johnson. Actually, he was over 90 when he wrote it. Now, there are little odds and ends pieces of paper. So it took me quite a while to decipher. It was in English, luckily. But he lived on, it's G, isn't it? South of Cushing.
Somewhere in the Eurekan area.
Well, I was going to tell him, actually, right next to that Annie Casperson's, where her parents came when she was 7, and then her name wasn't Casperson. She married Emil, and their book is up here too. Anyway, he was next door neighbor to this one, and this describes quite a bit of what the life was like there.
Can I get some more information on the Eureka Baptist?
Yes, you can.
Eureka Baptist, actually, when Sherman's grandfather first came here, he used to walk from Eureka Center to Trade Lake to go to church. In fact, a lot of them did from the area, Eureka area, they went up there. And finally, in 1881, they decided to start their own church in Eureka Center, which was actually on County Road G, north of Eureka. And in 1922 and 23, they moved it to Eureka Center.
What a lot.
Yeah, what a walk. Walk or horses, that's how they got there.
This is a booklet that I helped a far distant relative on the Jensen side put together. And I remember it because I was told by another Jensen relative when I started looking information up about 20 years ago that there was 3 brothers that came from Denmark and 1 sister. But she was married before she came, and she settled in Michigan. So I looked through all of the census records in Michigan, and with that name and stuff, I couldn't find anything. Well, then a few years later, she came down to Eureka because she knew that her family had come from Eureka. And this was a Jensen Elsa, and she married Boonsgaard, that was the original founder of the church also. And this is the book that she put together with the information that Cindy and I helped her with. And it's got some real sad things in it too, on fire, and she and one of her twin boys died. But it was a vague, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And my mom, Ernest Sigler Jensen.
I was wondering about the Danish Churches. Did they speak Danish, I imagine, in the beginning? When did they switch over to English then?
I don't know.
1920?
Yeah, was it one full switch, or did they switch gradually?
Well, I think it's 1920 that they changed writing the minutes of the meeting from Dane to English.
I know in Dale Swedish Church, it was every other Sunday, and then they kept making it fewer and fewer, and it was into the 30s. So
In the Cushing Lutheran Church, in the 1930s, the minister that was there was required to do 1 Danish service per month, but by then they had pretty much switched to English. And at the same time that the Lutheran Church in Cushing switched to English speaking was about the time the Methodist Church in Cushing closed, because a lot of the folks who didn't speak Danish or Scandinavian would have gone to the Lutheran Church in Cushing but didn't understand it, so the Methodist Church was the alternative. And when that depression hit, and at the same time the Danes finally deigned to speak English, that kind of ended the Cushing Lutheran Methodist Church between the two of them.
I'd like to hear some of the other family names of the people that are here. This is my sister Phyllis. Younger. I would like to hear some of the family names of who you have buried up in, or who you're related to. Yeah, has everybody gotten a chance? Dorothy, you told, and some other people that have.
Well, Daniel Christian is my grandpa, and he's buried there, and his daughter Elsie that died at 3 from diphtheria. and with his daughter Naomi and Hannah, and a son Andy was buried there.
Do you know what got them, what was it, do you know why they came from Denmark? Was it religious, or?
Do you want to pass that mic to the speaker, and if anybody's speaking, then the rest of us can hear that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Mrs. Nelson.
Hold it up close to your mouth.
This is Mrs. Nelson. No, it wouldn't be Nelson. Your maiden name is Nelson.
Yes, and we spelled it Nelson because I always understood when they came, the brothers and my sister, there was so many Nielsen that they decided to have a different name. So they started spelling it Nelson.
Can you hand that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna wait.
Except hats, he took the name Malado after remembrance of a town in Denmark. But then he had two sons or two grandsons, and they changed the spelling of that name too. So it's been kept pretty hard to get the relationship.
What is that name now?
Lado. And some of them spell L-A-W and some A-U-L. So then they are buried in New Home too. Quite common.
With my research the last years in Scandinavia, I think they can hear me without, so then I won't hang up visiting. There was a very common to have the name change. And this Annie Jensen, my grandmother, great-grandmother, father changed his name 5 times when I checked it out. The name of their farm was very important. And they sometimes went by, like lost son, the son is patriotic, but sometimes they did. Sometimes they went by where they grew up, where they came from. And also, they went by a military man. When they went in the services, there was way too many Jenses. And so the military man gave them nicknames, and some of them chose. And, I hear once in a while that they think their name was changed to Ellis Island, but I haven't found any of that true. I think that's a little hearsay. But maybe some of them did, but I haven't. And I have over 6,000 names related to us, and I haven't found it in that. But it could be. So this is Nelson. Who else do we have here?
Goodmanson.
Oh.
My grandfather's brother is buried in New Home in his wife, but he's not the relative of John Goodmanson. He has different spelling, plus we're Norwegian.
But with Goodmanson, now I saw there was Goodmanson in the cemetery, but did you grow up on 87?
That's my grandfather's place.
Okay, so that's his son. And Betty is your sister?
Pardon?
No. Okay, I'll leave that.
His grandfather was Gus Goodmanson, and I think a lot of people maybe know Gary Goodmanson from around here. That's a cousin.
Was my grandfather's farm.
Yeah. And
Do you still have the farm?
But Gary does.
it's still in the family.
It hasn't been 100 years?
Yeah, we have.
So do you have a century stamp farm?
He did have a sign that went for a while, but it's not there now.
Well, you gotta put up your own because the county society doesn't have enough people or money.
He also has an aunt, Cora Goodmanson, who was Gus' sister, married James Bondman. And that stone is up there.
Is that Norwegian or Danish now?
Beats me.
You have more work to do.
I'm German.
When you get back, then you can help me with my German.
Yeah. And then my grandfather, Ben, and grandmother, Emma Hatch, were buried, and that's the stone of Franklin that she was talking about. Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Well, so we have that. Betty is my aunt. My dad is Vernon, and Betty's parents is Sherman, and this is my cousin Steve. And Betty has done a lot of work in that area if you're needing any advice or help. And then most of this up here, my family, which would take a whole long time to explain.
Betty and Sherman worked here at the cemetery before Steve got it.
Right.
That's why he's so much thought.
But, Eureka Center,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just show a couple of, I didn't find the kiosk, but Judy had sent a few pictures of the
oh, this is a different
New
group.
Home Cemetery, is it?
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
cemetery.
So, let's see if we can't, well, we're here. If I can see, get the wrong glasses.
I did have